cannot believe that I will never hear those riffs again. Man, that was such bad news. I was getting ready for the show yesterday. Just finished up a training class. Went downstairs. My son told me Eddie Van Halen died yesterday. Man, I hate to start the show on a sad note, but I remember that first album. That was probably my first album. Was this one, 1984. I was about 10 years old. I remember saving up my grass cutting money to buy my first cassette tape, and this was it. It was Van Halen. So any other Van Halen fans out there, please put that in the notes, drop that in the comments. But again, I don't want to start the show on a sad note, but that was very unfortunate news yesterday to lose one of the best in the world that I've ever heard. And I remember that as a kid, man. I remember growing up on Van Halen, just loved that album. Yeah, so yeah, sad, super sad to see him go. But again, welcome to the show. This is the Do What Is Necessary live stream coming to you live right here in the Orange Nomad Studios here in Columbus, Ohio. Welcome to the show. I'm glad to have you. Thanks for tuning in, sharing your earbuds with me today. Looks like we got Eric from Columbus right here in the OH. So welcome to the show, Eric. I just wanted to say, Eric, too, shout out to you, repeat guests. I love the fact that people come back week in, week after to tune into this awesome content. And, for me, I've gotten a lot of feedback since we've been doing this show, and I'm super excited to be able to week in and week out. We took a couple weeks off. As you notice, we upgraded a few things around here, upgraded some of our network here at the studio. And then last week, I was actually attending a virtual conference. I did some speaking, was on a panel discussion at GlueX for the folks at IT Glue. So yeah, repping those folks that are still in the IT field. Happy to rep Orange Nomad and LinkedIn for MSP. So welcome to the show, Brandy, from sunny San Francisco. Hopefully those fires are out there in California, or at least dying down. You guys are getting back to normal. I mean, what is normal anymore? Anyway. So again, welcome to the show. We got lots to talk about today. Yes, I agree with you, Eric. Rest in peace, Eddie. So I'm going to miss him. Going to miss hearing those guitar licks, and no more new Van Halen albums coming out. So let me know if you can hear me okay. Let's just make sure. Eric is saying that he's not able to tune into the live stream, that I'm kind of froze up there. So we'll just make sure that all the technical stuff. If you just want to do a quick screen refresh, Eric, if I lost you, I apologize. So anyway, so the topic of this week's show is one that is kind of, again, I talk a lot about things that are kind of near and dear to my heart, things that lessons learned, if you will, in life. And man, I've made lots of mistakes running businesses, lots of mistakes in life. But yeah, this is one of them that I think is a pertinent topic that nobody really wants to talk about a whole lot. And is your ego writing checks your body can't cash? So we're going to get into that in a moment. So Brandy says, not on fire at the moment, so that's awesome. Glad to hear that. Let's see if we have other Glenn joining us. First time I've seen you in the comments. Glenn, welcome to the show. A longtime Van Halen fan as well. So if you're a Van Halen fan, please put that in the comments. We're connected with other Van Halen fans. This is kind of my ode to Van Halen. So, all right, Eric's back, so we can get started. So let's get ripping into our content this week. So let's talk about, is your ego writing checks your body can't cash? And that's really where I was, toward the end of 2014, a couple years ago, 6 years ago. that's kind of where I was at. I built my last IT company, ran that for 10 years, grew that from the ground up, wore all the hats inside that business, grew it phenomenally the last 2 years, and eventually sold that. But I got to thinking about the things that I would have done a little bit different, and the lessons learned, I think are super key for me there, and that was one of them, is having an unhealthy obsession with growth at all costs. And I still see that rampant in every industry, not just in the IT industry. But where it hits close to home for me is, friends, people that I've known in the IT industry for a long, long time. I read posts of people passing away. I read posts of people hitting a wall, not just physically, and writing checks on the physical side, but also the mental side of running a business. It can really grind you away. And I think that, for me, we're going to jump back into the 80s for a second before we jump into here. My wife wanted to know where I got that line from, writing checks your ego's writing checks your body can't cash. And this is the basis for this week's show right here.
Maverick, you just did an incredibly brave thing. What you should have done was land your plane. You don't own that plane, the taxpayers do. Son, your ego is writing checks your body can't cash.
Any other Top Gun fans? We're going to take a deep dive into the 80s this week. So that's where that topic came from. Your ego's writing checks your body can't cash. And, it's a topic that I think a discussion that needs to happen right now. Right now, again, with all of the things that we see going on, all the things that 2020, the dumpster fire that 2020's been globally so far, that we need to think about that. We as business owners, we that are running companies, or even those of us working for other people, is thinking about that and having, is your life your work's leftovers? Is your life the doggy bag? And, I really take time to still think about that, where it can kind of get away from me, is that workaholic mentality, that I have. And again, it's just grained in from my upbringing. I know how to work hard. I know how to be tenacious, to be creative. But it's when those things get away from you, when you start making, setting goals that are ego-driven. And we've all been there. And, I used to go every quarter to meet with other IT providers and brainstorm and work on our business, not necessarily in our business. But that's really the thing that stood out for me was, that phrase of BHAG, the big, hairy, audacious goal. And I thought about, those of you who are setting goals, for starting to set goals for next year, that yes, I think life has to have goals. We have to have things that we're reaching for. But I think so many times of the goals that we set, especially as entrepreneurs, that they are so high, that they are so ego-driven, that, okay, what if you do attain those? And what will you get from that? And you're just going to, raise the bar, and we keep setting more unreasonable expectations for ourselves. And again, I'm not here to say that having goals in business and having goals in life are wrong, and don't have goals and, don't want to up your game and get better. But I think it's the evaluation of where those goals, the ultimate motivation of where those goals are coming from. Are they to drive our ego? And I think that is only a question that you can answer. And we see that, the hustle mania, the work till you drop dead mentality that still permeates every industry. And I think so much of it is ego driven. We set goals because we want to, up the next guy. We set goals because we want to be like somebody else. We set goals because what are other people going to think if I don't have, elevate my game? I don't get better at what we're doing, and then I don't crush quota and all those other things, all that other mentality that's out there. And I'm rambling, a little bit with this because I suffered from this for so long, and I think about the things that I'm doing right now, the decisions that I make, how much of it is still driven by my ego, that need to conquer, that obsessive need that I have to master something and get the mastery over something. And some things in life are worth doing that, and quite frankly, some things in life just aren't worth spending the time sweating the details. But I think that the stress that we create for ourselves from ego-driven stress, that bleeds over into our life. Our families feel that. Our employees feel that. And I think it's self-evaluation if you run a company, if you're an entrepreneur. Yes, we are very, very driven. We're cut from a different fabric. But a lot of our employees aren't. A lot of our employees aren't going to give everything that we will for our companies, for our businesses. Because so much of that is people's businesses are tied to their self-worth, which is ultimately your ego. And I think the quicker we decouple our self-worth and our ego from our businesses, how much differently things will change. How much differently our life will be, not just outside of work. That our life won't be work's doggy bag, the leftovers that we bring home for ourselves, the leftovers of whatever we have left for our family. But I think that was the reason that I figured that this would be a topic of this week's discussion. And if you've been driven by that, or if you have worked for somebody or are currently working for somebody who has that obsessive need where their goals seem to be driven by their ego. And I think we can all raise our hands to the fact that we've worked for people like that. That, as soon as we reach this year's goals, what happens to next year? We've got another set of, a lot of times, unattainable goals. And they feed somebody else's ego. But I think it's time. I think it's time that we said that that's enough. And that is one of the reasons that I started this show. And that's one of the reasons I come every week and cover topics that nobody else wants to talk about, is doing what is necessary. And what is necessary in your life may not be necessary in my life or the next person. It may not be necessary in our employees' lives. But are we pushing what we feel is necessary on somebody else? Are we pushing things on somebody else that is driven by our ego? And now I think is the time more than ever, and this year has certainly taught me a lesson in humility. And I think true leadership comes from that place, from being humble and recognizing that we can't do everything ourselves, that we need people to help us, we need our team to help us. And when we set goals, when our priorities are set from that thinking, that mentality, from being humble and having that recognition, you'll be surprised how much easier it is to lead. You'll be surprised how much easier it is to get your team on board when they feel that the decisions they make in the direction of the company and even your family, the direction of your family isn't driven by your ego. And especially us guys, man, we just got that ego tuned up. And I've attended sessions. I was on a coaching session last week with somebody who just could not get over the fact that in order to, that he couldn't do everything. And he's setting goals that are unrealistic. This particular coaching client, was setting goals that are just, he wanted to go from $300,000 to $2 million next year in the middle of a recession. But he's not willing to put in the time, effort, energy, and the work needed to do that. And we finally got to that. Why is he setting that goal? And that's what it was, is because the next IT company in the town where he lives, that's what they're doing. So he wants to try to conquer them. And that's where the place where he was coming from. It was all about ego. So again, I think it's time to stop celebrating the crazy at work. I think it's time to stop celebrating 70, 80, 90 hours a week. I think it's time to stop celebrating hustle mania. because so much of that, I mean, you boil it all down. No one wants to admit it, but that is the truth. It's driven by ego. Anyway, I'll get off my soapbox for this week. So let's stop running, keep up with the Joneses corporations. Stop running, keep up with the Joneses businesses. So that's my rant for this week. If you agree with that, please drop that in the comments. If you don't agree with that, please put that in the comments. If you don't agree with the fact that most of our goals are ego-driven, most of the things that we do, especially when competition in business comes from ego. And I think it's a reality check that we need to make. And as we go into the fourth quarter here, which we've started, I think it's time to us to evaluate how we close out this year, how we set goals for next year, how we lead our teams, our family, our life, how we do things differently going forward. All right. So I will get off my soapbox on that one. So as I mentioned, I forgot to cover this article. This is really what spurred this article here for me. Is I was reading this on LinkedIn. Arrogance can spread like a disease. So again, I got way ahead of myself on the slides. Anyway, that's where this started from. Is just how much arrogance permeates inside of a company, inside of culture, and how much it can poison the culture of a business because of the arrogance and the egotism of the people running. Anyway, so as I mentioned, this is Q4. There is no Q5. And I'm going to steal this from a friend of mine here in Columbus, and another fellow entrepreneur, Brandon Bornanson, who I think he stopped using this a while ago, but I'm going to swipe it from him from a couple years ago. There is no Q5. Now, last year, I did an accelerator, the No Q5 accelerator, with a group of IT providers, and we tackled this topic of the fact that there is no Q5. What can you do to salvage the year? And again, I think for a lot of us, trying to salvage this year, I think was, if we look at our goals that we started for the beginning of 2020. I think we derailed a long, long time ago. So we've had to, we internally here at Orange Nomad, we've had to readjust our goals for the year. Our plan stays the same. We just had to readjust where our goals. And again, it was a reevaluation. Is that an ego-driven? Is it a realistic expectation of what we can do here in the fourth quarter? And the fact that there is no Q5, this is my advice to business owners. I was on another call last week. This is the advice that I would give any business owner, but especially if you're running an IT company, because I still see this. I've been out of the business for a while, but I still coach a lot of IT providers, and I still see these 4 things that they need to get a hold of in their business. And these are companies that have been around for 7, 8, 9, 10 years, but they don't have these things dialed in yet. And the first one, number 1, is automating your money. And what do I mean by that? So many of the IT companies out there struggle with collections. They struggle with billing. They struggle with accounting for all of the time that their technicians spend in their company, that the people spend in their company, and whether or not they're billing enough. And I still see this even in other lines of work. And we have all of these tools that make billing much easier. And automating your billing, that was one of the first things that we did way back in 2006, is that we had automated payment collections. We had automated invoicing. I would do invoicing 1 day a month, and then automatically all of those things would pull. All the credit card processing, check processing, ACH would process on the 28th. And so many IT providers, so many companies don't have their hands around this. You're never going to be able to grow. You're not going to ever be able to work through a crisis like this if you don't have the cash flow, if you don't have the burn rate to be able to survive hiccups in business. And that was one of the things that really helped me when we did that in 2006. That helped us survive the recession of 2008. And I fully believe that. Because going into the beginning of every month, we had the funds necessary to pay people. We had the funds necessary to pay our vendors, to pay our contractors, to pay our employees. And there's so many tools out there. I'm not going to get into a deep dive on the tools that you can use. But if you're in the IT space especially, ConnectWise, Autotask, any of your PSA tools can do that, can do automatic invoice generating, can do time tracking, billing, those types of things. I mean, for goodness sake, you got QuickBooks. I could rattle off the tech stack that's available to get this under control. But if you haven't done this is one of the things that I would make a Q4 priority going into 2021, is to make this a standard operating procedure inside your business, to get your billing automated. And I know there's a lot of things we do in the IT space. Keeping track of time is not one of the things that we want to be doing. But in order for you to grow, in order for you to survive, that is top tip number 1 for Q4 here, is to get your handle on that, get a handle on your finances. And, again, I still talk to people that they're 30, 60, 90 days out. Heck, the company that I sold to was like 6 months they hadn't billed one company for. And I just couldn't wrap my head around that. How do we let that go for that long? Anyway, so get a handle on that. Next thing, it goes around productivity, personal development, whatever you want to call that. But develop a stop doing list. Develop, and I don't care where you put it. You can put it in Trello, you can put it in Outlook, you can put it in OneNote, wherever you keep it, whatever your tool, you write it down on a piece of paper. But develop a list of the things that you need to stop doing. Things that you can easily either stop doing, that you can delegate those things to somebody else, or that you can automate. And I think that list for us as entrepreneurs should be fairly large, because most of our time should be spent on business development and team leadership. Those are the things that we should be doing as entrepreneurs inside of our companies. So if you don't have the time to do those things, take a look at what's on your stop doing list. But every week I go through and I look at things. What did I do this last week that I could easily delegate? Can I eliminate it? Can I, delegate it to somebody else? Or can I use the tools and the software and the things that are available to me right now to automate those tasks so that I don't have to keep doing them over and over again? But write that down. Develop a stop doing list. Number 3 is maximizing client value. What do I mean by that? I still struggled with this for a long time, and we keep thinking that we need new leads, we need new sales, we need net new inside of our businesses. And I really stopped and took a look at this probably 2010, 2011 in my last business, and I evaluated what other products and services do we provide that my current clients, the people that already know, like, and trust me, the people that are writing me checks, what other products and services am I offering that they could benefit from that solves a problem inside their business? And then we made a plan each quarter of covering those things. Are there things that we're not doing? Is it training? Is it, again, if you're in the tech space, is it VoIP? Are your customers buying everything that you offer? Do they even know you offer it? And that really hit me on, in the head when I was at a client's. We did web development, and I heard a couple of people in the office talking about a new website that they needed, and I never bothered to even bring it up to that point. When I said, we happen to do web development, they had no idea. So are your customers aware of all the products and services that you offer? So that's what number 3, maximizing client value. And I think if you evaluate, most of us don't necessarily, we might not need new customers. It's just about taking better care of the current customers that we have. And number 4, I covered this, I think, last month's show. A documented sales process. And this is one of the things I did during 2008 recession with our last business. That I took the time to fix all of the leaking holes inside of my company during that pause button downturn, whatever you want to call it. We're in that right now. Is that we're still in that pause button. So these are the things that I would fix if I were a business owner, and if I look at these things, what things am I not doing right now? What things do we need to fix inside of our business? These are probably the top 4 that I could think of right off the bat that will make a dramatic difference inside any business, not just any tech business. So if you're doing those things, if that's something that you have taken the time to do, and better yet, is there anybody out there that survived previous recessions? And if you have, if you're watching this after the fact, what did you do during those downturns to really elevate you so that you were able to thrive coming out of those recessions? And I'm always curious to see, what list people come up with. All right. So let's take. I'm going to take a quick drink before we bust into our orange spotlight for the week. All right, our orange spotlight for the week. I'm going to talk a little bit about and again, I'm going to do a little bit of self-serving, if you will, humble brag, whatever. Last week, I was on a panel discussion with some of the top guys that have been in the IT space. I was part of GlueX. I was on a panel discussion with some pretty big heavy hitters, people that have sold businesses in the past and that still do a lot in the IT space, do a lot of coaching and mentoring for IT companies. And there was a lot of neat things that I learned from that panel discussion. And those of you who are in the IT space, we all know Gary Pica. It was an honor to sit on that panel. But it was an also unique position because I had a little bit of, kind of out of place. I was the underdog of the group. I didn't, build massively multi-million-dollar companies and sold them. I guess I represented the sub $1 million club, which I think is a lot of my customers and a lot of you watching this show. But there were some great things that Gary, John, and Chip gave away in that panel discussion. And here's a link to it if you want to go back and watch that. The folks from IT Glue put on an awesome event. So I just wanted to thank Holly, Carlos, for the phenomenal job that they did in running that and your whole teams. So I just wanted to give a shout out to all the folks at IT Glue for an incredible event. Guy Kawasaki was the keynote speaker, and there was a lot of cool things in there in his keynote. But I just wanted to point out, if you're in the IT space, if you're in any business owner, there was a lot of tidbits that you could take away as a business owner in this panel discussion. So I wanted to make that available. I wanted to spotlight that. I think it was about an hour long. We could have easily gone for a couple hours. Some of the things we were talking about was sales and marketing, recruitment, running a business, all the challenges of that. It wasn't just a technical discussion. So I think it was beneficial. And the reason I'm spotlighting that, I think it's beneficial for any person running a company, any entrepreneur who watches this show, to be able to go back and watch that. And again, there's not a lot of technical jargon, technical speak in there. All right, we've come to the last segment on our show, the Ask Questions, Get Answers segment. So if you have a question or if you've enjoyed the show up to this point, please make good use of the buttons that are at the bottom of the screen, the like and like buttons. Give me a thumbs up. Let me know whether you've enjoyed the show so far. But let's cover our last question. And we're talking about recession. We're talking about, the challenges of working through difficult economies. And this question actually came up after last week's panel discussion. And I had this gentleman reach out to me and said, during the 2008 recession, what did you start doing differently in your business? And I've already covered my top four, the top four things that I made sure that we had our hands on. But I think one of the things that I started to look for in my business was looking outside of my business. And at the time, there weren't many peer groups in the IT space or just many business peer groups here in Central Ohio at that time. So I went on a search for trying to find accountability groups specifically, not just somebody to hang out and talk shop with, but somebody an accountability group that we can hold each other accountable, that we can work through business and life challenges. So that for me was probably one of the biggest changes that I made post 2008. Is I joined an accountability group of other business owners. If some of you may or may not, if those are in Central Ohio at least, the International Bootstrappers Association. I joined that, and that was phenomenal because it allowed me to really be in a peer environment where somebody outside of the industry that I was in can look in on my industry and see things in a completely different light. Because, when running a business, we only see things, we kind of get tunnel vision, we only see things a certain way. And when we only go to industry events, everybody's saying and doing the things kind of the same way all the time. And it's when I started to get that feedback from people outside of my industry and how they perceived my industry. I think that was probably the biggest thing that I did differently, and it really made me, reevaluate how we thought about our business and the way that we did things and the way that we ran our business. But that's, EOS would be another one. I actually attended 2009. I picked up the book Traction and after attending an EOS workshop. So any EOS folks out there, I've been on EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System, for a long, long time. But that was one of the things that, again, we implemented during 2008, 2009, so that we were able to start growing again after the recession hit. So that is our show for this week. Thanks for hanging out with me. I appreciate you. I thank you if you're watching this show after the fact. I appreciate the fact that you were able to share your screen with me, share your earbuds if you're watching this, if you're just listening to this broadcast after the fact. And if there's topics that you would like to cover in a future episode, please let me know. Reach out. I'm always curious to see what topics are on people's minds and things where we can help. And I'm happy that we're able to keep doing this show week in and week out. And I'm happy that we have viewers week in and week out. And we have loyal folks who tune in every week with us. And again, I just wanted to say, a big shout out to all of you. And if you're watching this for the first time, welcome, and I hope that we catch you on a future broadcast. So again, if you've liked this episode, if you think that this was something you benefited from, I'd be super grateful if you could give us a like or a share. I would be even more grateful if you could share this with somebody else. Let somebody else know, another entrepreneur, another colleague, that this show, we're going to, again, get back to our regularly scheduled show on Wednesdays at 3 p.m. And again, we did quite a few upgrades in the last few weeks. So thanks again for tuning in. I am Andrew Moon, Orange Nomad. Stay humble. Always stay humble and kind. And always, always, always do what is necessary. What's necessary for me is not necessary for you or the next guy, but always do exactly what is necessary for you. Take care, and I'll see you on next week's show.